For being here this evening, and special thanks to Isak. It's wonderful to have you with us again. For those of you who don't know, probably Alison, you're probably the only one. Dr. Maria has been one of our supervisors, one of our valued supervisors for a long time. He's now branched out on his own and focusing on his own practice. But it's wonderful that we're able to welcome you back, Isak, and I really hope this won't be the last time. And Isak's going to be talking to us about logotherapy in nature, a subject which is close to the hearts of many of us here this evening. And so over to you, Isak.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thanks to everybody for being here. I really appreciate the privilege to be back and see some very familiar faces. Tonight, as Mark has said, we're talking about logotherapy and nature. And for those of you who are trainers on this meeting, you may have heard most of it before, but I've added some things to it, and would also like to share a video with you to elucidate and go into some of the principles that I'd like to share with you tonight. So the question is, how can we use logotherapy, and what can nature teach us through logotherapy, or vice versa, especially for some of our clients, where you often find it difficult to find something to start off with as a talk, or a something that you can connect your principles and the logotherapy principles to. And I found it often quite useful to use specifically the metaphors in nature. So I'm going to spend 5 minutes just talking about the principles of logotherapy that you can see in nature. Then after that, we're going to show a short video. But the video, okay, let's get to the video a little bit later. Let's just talk about the first part of things first. And please excuse me if I have to look down at my notes, because otherwise I just waffle. So I try and keep it a bit structured. And so first of all, Frankl, if we look at the principles of logotherapy, we are taught that there are three basic types of values that we all realize, which is the creative values, the experiential values, and the attitudinal values. Now, nature specifically can talk to us something about the experiential values in what we can see through nature, um, where it can help us to find meaning through encounters with beauty, awe, and transcendence. So when you see the marvel and the splendor of nature, you cannot but be transcended by the deep sense of awe and the connection to something that's much larger than yourself, which is something that we find specifically in our modern day world extremely difficult to realize, that there is something much, much larger than yourself, and a meaning much bigger than your day-to-day just existence. It also shows us the order in nature. Nature certainly has some laws that you cannot get past. We often refer to the laws of nature. You know, if we can't understand something, we say, well, it's a law of nature. And we sometimes don't think of what we're saying, but we're saying that if we talk of things like boundaries, etc., those are inherently taught to us in nature itself. If you stand outside and it rains, it gets wet. If it's cold and you're outside, you will get hypothermia. There's no getting past it. Um, and one often thinks that you can get past certain rules of life. Like, I'm not going to get old. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to get sick. It's a law of nature that it will. And nature teaches us those lessons quite harsh, quite harshly sometimes. Nature has some beautiful metaphors in it, and I want to talk a little bit about the metaphors in the video that we'll be watching just now. So nature also has specific cycles that it goes through: summer, winter, etc., etc., day and night, wet season, dry season. blossoming. There's a time to die and a time to live in nature. It also, and you can very nicely use nature and some videos around nature to remind people of this, not only transcendence, but also that even in the midst of winter, there is a summer coming. You just need to transcend, and if it is suffering that it is that your client is battling with, in the cold of night, you can always remember that the sun will come up and there will be a day coming again. So the tree bent by wind. When we look at the and our, when we look at our video now, we can all look at the metaphors in a tree that's struck down by lightning, that blossoms again afterwards. A river that winds its way through obstacles, which shows us the persistence and the adaptation that can happen. So one can use all of these metaphors in nature, not only for our clients, but also for ourselves, to remind us of all these things. So nature, it endures and it has an amazing capacity for regeneration. We all remember the videos of how in Venice during COVID, when the people disappeared, how clear the water became, how nature regenerates itself, how even in Chernobyl, it's only 40, 50 years later, but Chernobyl can hardly be recognized as people being there. It looks like ancient ruins from the medieval times. The nature has just regrown and taken it over in one generation. And one can remind yourself that you can regenerate as well, even in the midst of suffering, and even when you think that your life has been completely destroyed and there's nothing more, you can regenerate and find the beauty in it as well. So nature also helps us then with a third value through the things that I've said, which is the experiential value. So even through suffering, nature teaches us that there's always a tomorrow. Nature also provides us a refuge. Sometimes we all just want to run away from life, and you see this in the big cities like London, Korea, Beijing, all those places. They all have a Hyde Park, a big park somewhere, um, where people go to run, walk their dogs, or just sit under a tree, or just contemplate things, spend time with loved ones. And this is often the time when nature affords us the chance to reconnect with our spiritual core, that of ourselves and that of the person that you may be sharing it with, or the persons that you share it with. For those of us that may have been lucky enough to have walks in nature with loved ones or holidays in nature with loved ones, um, I know how important that was to me as a child, and how even now, many, many years later, uh, the connection that I had with my family was always the strongest in nature, and through the things that we saw and taught in nature. The other principle that nature can help you with is the idea of an existential vacuum, the sense of emptiness or aimlessness. We often go to nature and we say, can you hear the silence? You sit outside under the stars at night, with nothing there. You don't hear absolutely anything, perhaps only your breathing and the breathing of the one with you. So we live in a noisy world, and we live in a world where we always have to fill everything with either music or other sounds or blabbering. Sometimes you talk just for the sake of talking. It seems as though we are a bit afraid of silence. But nature is actually mostly a silent thing. Uh, we like the sounds of the waves of the ocean and the crashing of there, but go out into the ocean, where just away from the shore, and you'll hardly hear absolutely anything. You won't hear the waves lapping even. Uh, there's no such silence as an evening on an ocean away from shore. There's no such silence as in the Kalahari at midnight. Um, so it often forces us to sit still, contemplate things, and be with ourselves, be with the person that we're with, without having to fill anything in between. You're just filled by silence, which is sometimes the biggest communication that there can be, is in that amazing silence. Why do we like to watch sun going down, and why do we like watching the sun coming up? Because it's these metaphors of rebirth, or a changing season, or the end of a chapter in your life, or the time that you can spend with yourself or your loved one. The other thing is nature does not uh, have any judgment about who you are, or what you think, what you believe, how much money you are, what dimension of human that you are. Um, if a lion wants to catch you, he'll catch you. He's not going to ask you how much money you have or what belief you are. Uh, if the weerligstraal, if the thunder from the top is coming down, it's not going to ask any of those questions. If you're stranded in the Kalahari, no one's going to ask you any of those questions. The things that we often put so much value to in our lives. And Frankl and the teaching of logotherapy tells us that all humans are equal. All humans have an enduring soul. Uh, um, all humans have these three dimensions, that we're all taught, and it gives us a time to realize our smallness in the universe, and the things that we so much value or chase after. When you're out there in nature and you're out under the open sky in the universe, none of those things actually matter. And the only things that really matter then is, what is your meaning and what is your place in this large universe? And there's no answer to that apart from the answer that you can give it yourself. And we taught that in logotherapy, that there is no religion, there is no money, there is no anything other of any worth, um, on this planet and as a human, rather than other than the meaning that you find within yourself. It's a this can be a deeply healing realization, because we all carry so much hurt and pain and beliefs about ourselves and beliefs about other people. And when I was 5, this happened to me, and I had a terrible person as a boss. I had a terrible this, I had a terrible that. You know, it's all these things that influence us. Nature, nature strips it away. Nature doesn't even know about that. It completely strips you into your naked self, your naked spiritual being of who you are inside yourself. And what meaning do you ascribe to this life that we've been blessed with? There's nothing else that matters. All of the things that has happened to you, all of the things that will happen to you, is all of no meaning apart from the meaning that you ascribe to it and your spiritual sense and being within yourself. And that is what nature stops you in your tracks, and teaches you. Nature is also an extremely beautiful thing. So uh, it's always amazing. You go out onto the open sea. What do you see? Nothing. You see the sky and you see the water. There's nothing. And people come back and they say, that was so beautiful. And so, what did you see? And nothing. It's beautiful. This nothingness can be absolutely beautiful. You can walk in the Kirstenbosch Gardens and you can say, what did you see? Most beautiful flowers, trees. It's so awe-inspiring. You can't even see anything. You can't see everything. You'll need a lifetime to see everything. And you ask, what did you see? And people say it was beautiful. We have this inherent sense of beauty in nature. It reminds us that anything from nothing to everything can be beautiful. It depends on the eye that you see it through. You stand in the middle of the Sahara Desert. I stood on the Etosha Pan once together with my 2 sons. and they ran away to go and see where the sun comes up because there's nothing. Um, and you could see them running and running and running and running, and I had to go and get them with a 4x4 after a while, because there is just absolutely nothing. And it was just such an experience to experience the nothingness and to think to yourself, there is nothing other than you in that moment, you and the ones that you are with. So this can lead to a great, real spiritual awakening inside yourself. When it, from an existential perspective, you can realize that nature can teach you everything that logotherapy can teach you, and vice versa. And nature is actually the best logotherapist that's ever been made, and it's there for free. It's there for us to contemplate, and it just, perhaps it can help in our clients when we share this with them, that look at all these things that nature can teach you. And nature doesn't lie. It's not sitting there. Sometimes you go into a therapist or a logotherapist's office and you say, so what are we going to talk about today? What are we going to talk about today? And the answer is, nature doesn't want to talk to you about anything. It just, you talk to yourself when you're in nature. And that's the best therapist, because the best therapist will not try and teach you. It will leave you to find your own meaning, and it will help you it will move you along the way. So it will rain on your head, okay, if it needs to teach you that life is harsh, okay? It will also give you a beautiful sunrise to teach you that life can be beautiful. Um, it can let you sit in the desert without water to teach you that you have to go out and find water, my friend. So it's all there. It's all there for us. Um, so yeah, those are the thoughts and the principles that I wanted to share with you. So we're going to watch a short video. It's only about 9 minutes long. Um, my apologies for it being in Afrikaans, but luckily I think that most of the people around the table can at least understand can understand some Afrikaans, even if you don't hear a single word of what he said, because it was not made as a logotherapy video. It was just a video that was made. Okay. What does this show us? For me, there's quite a lot of metaphors in there, and I'll share some of them with you. So it's my wife and I, Monique. One of our favorite places on this planet is called the Central Kalahari Game Reserve, which is about 8 hours drive from Joburg. Completely inaccessible if you don't have a four-wheel drive. There's no water, there's no electricity, there's no nothing. There is nothing. If I mean there's nothing, there's nothing. Okay? You pay an inordinate amount of money for the privilege to go there. Um, and when you talk about the money, is you pay. Uh, Life has become such that to have 10 million hectares or area that is open just for nature itself, you have to be able to justify in some way how you keep the humans out. So that land must generate money, and therefore it costs money to go there, because to keep people out, you need to not give them the resources that is on that area. But this is not an economics lecture. It's just the harsh reality of our modern society. But when you go there, there's you hardly ever see anybody else. As I say, there's no water, there's no electricity, there's no fences. It is hopefully the way that God has made it a few million years ago, and that's all you see, which is why we love to be there as well. So you will see there are one or two man-made objects that you'll see in the video. One is a burnt-out car, and that's a whole metaphor in itself, uh, about, your car burns out sometimes, and sometimes you die in that burnt car, and you may be the survivor from that burnt-out car. And how do you go on with your life? And what it teaches you from that. The other one, the other man-made objects that there are, is a very rudimentary pit latrine without water. It's basically a hole in the ground. Okay, and then there is a bucket shower. You have to bring your own water because there's no water. So you put your water in your 4x4 so that if you would like to shower, you can shower under cold water under the stars. It's also a journey going to the CKG and back. It's a journey that is a wonderful journey. We normally go for 3 or 4 days. And the metaphor of this whole journey as well that we're going with. So you'll see, roughly translated is, but I say it in the video, people always ask us, what is it? Why do we always go back to Botswana? What is it with you people in Botswana? What is there? There's nothing. Why do you keep going back there? And this is a little bit of an exploration about why is it that we always go back to Botswana? Why is it that we always go into nature? And with some of the principles in the background of what I've just said, let's watch the video, and there's probably about 15 minutes or so that we can then share some thoughts. But have a look for the metaphor. There is a tree that's struck down by lightning as well. And there's a lion that wants to catch everything always that you have to watch out for. So I'm going to share my screen now. And Robert, I'm watching my WhatsApp. If you can't see or hear, please let me know on WhatsApp. But I'm gonna do that now. Thanks, guys.
Mense vra ons altyd, wat is dit met julle in Botswana? Maar in Pretoria sê hulle mos nie mense nie, hulle sê mos mensies. So mensies, wat is dit met julle in Botswana? Miskien is dit die pragtige sonsondergange, of dat jy kan stort onder die sterre, die pragtige kampeerplekke, die ongeëwenaarde skoonheid van die natuur. Is dit die diere, die leeu's, die olifante, die lang pad wat jy ry, die pragtige natuurtonele, is die ongenaakbaarheid van hierdie wêreld, of miskien is dit net omdat ons saam 'n paar koues wil geniet. Wat ook al die rede, jy het nie 'n rede om te gaan nie. Net om daar te wees is meer as genoeg. Ons ry hierdie keer na Kutsi 9 toe, en ons ry oor Gaborone. En soos altyd is daar die immer teenwoordigende diere langs die pad, met karre op en af wanneer jy nog op die teerpad is. Maar nie lank nie, jy is by Letlakeng, en van Letlakeng af vat jy die ongenaakbare sinkplaatpad, al die pad tot by die hek van die Kutsi Game Reserve. Hierdie keer gaan ons ook na Molossi en Moreswe toe, want ons was nog nie daar nie. En ons hoor, dit is waar mens die groot leeu's kry. Maar geniet eers 'n paar pragtige natuurtonele saam met ons. Maar ons kon ek net nie heeldag sit in sunsets afneem nie. Daar is leeu's om te soek. Maar op pad Moreswe toe is ons herinnering ongenaakbaarheid van hierdie land. Iemand wat op vakansie was en dis hoe dit geëindig het. 'n Uitgebrande kar langs die pad. Onthou, hierdie is 'n wilde en ongenaakbare land. Check out, het lyk soos 'n weerligstraal wat hierdie boom dan klaar gemaak het. So daar nog so dat die pad eintlik rondom gaan. Pad is toe daar. En nou gaan ons na die Moreswe pand. En daar gaan ons vir die eerste keer vandat ons die CKG besoek, gaan ons daar leeu's sien. Ons glo so anyway. En as daar 'n leeu is, moet daar sekerlik ook 'n aasvoël wees. Daar is allerhande pragtige fotogeleenthede op die Molossi pan. Nie die minste waarvan die leeu, die aasvoëls en 'n klomp kiewiete was, maar tannie olifant is nooit ver van ons af nie. En terwyl ons vir die leeu sit en kyk, ek het selfs uitgeklim om bietjie bene te rek en die volgende oomblik sien ons hierdie 3 ou grootes wat omtrent by ons was. Ja, ons het so klein bietjie vinnig teruggeklim in die kar, agteruit gery en toe vir die volgende 40 minute gesit en olifante kyk. Geen perfekte liedjie, geen perfekte dag en geen perfekte lewe hou egter vir altyd aan nie. Ons moes terugry na Kutse se kamp toe en die pragtige sonsondergang saam met ons neem. Net nog een keer vinnig gestop om die pad af te neem voordat ons by Kutse pan die dooie olifant gesien het. En weer eens herinner dit ons dat die lag kom saam met die traan en die lekker saam met die einde ook eventually. En die perfekte naweek het ook tot 'n einde gekom en ons het teruggery oor Gaborone huis toe waar ons 10:00 die maandag aand teruggekom het. Dankie dat julle nog 'n keer saam met Mons en ek gery het na die plek wat ons die liefste voor is, die Kutse Game Reserve, Botswana. Wat is dit tog met julle mense in Botswana?
Right, folks, are you still there? I just need to get back here. Hello, guys. Are you still there?
Yes. Isak, I have a question.
Yes.
When you show people die mense wat vir jou sê, wat is dit met julle mense in Botswana? When they've seen the video, do they still ask you the question or do they stop asking it?
Those people have luckily not seen the video.
Yeah, well, because if they had seen it, I don't think they would be able to ask anymore.
Yes. So you can't answer that question. It's like, why do you go to Botswana? Well, I tried to explain for 20 minutes why you go there. But it could have been any other place. I've got quite a few other ones as well, and it's all just made on my phone, so it's not of professional quality. But the moral of the story is, I hope it shows what an amazing experience nature can be for you, and how you can see logotherapy in the dead elephant, in the beautiful sunsets, in the journey that you take. in the lion, in, all of the things we've talked about. Yeah. So thank you, Mark. That's what I wanted to say, and perhaps get some other people's thoughts and so on. Thank you.
Would anybody like to share anything?
Sharon's got her hand up there.
Sharon.
Thank you, Isak, for really prompting us into thinking about how we can expand our applications of logotherapy in combination with nature. And what's really sort of standing out for me is the sense that somehow we became separated from nature as human beings. And actually, we are a part of nature. I think sometimes some of us, and through some of our, whether it be religious texts or religious teachings, kind of got to think that, well, we are separate from nature. And nature is there for us to do what it is that we want to do with it. And that we have a responsibility to it, but actually it's there for us to do what we like and what we wish. But really, what nature is a part of us. We have a responsibility to our well-being, we have a responsibility to nature's well-being, because in order for us to be well, nature needs to be well too. And when nature is well, then we can be well. And there's a thought that a lot of the anxiety, depression, stress that we're seeing in humans today, that's related to the fact that we are so separate from nature, and that there's a line of thought that believes that what we're seeing is what's called nature deficit disorder. And so that just watching your video for me I was just thinking, there's just so much in nature, and there's so much benefit to us to reconnect with nature, that even something as simple as taking our shoes off and standing outside on the earth, how fundamentally important that is, just for us to feel the sense that we're part of something that's so much bigger than us. And we can use that. I mean, from a logotherapeutic perspective, that's integral to logotherapy. That there is something that's transcendent, that we can transcend ourselves, that we can transcend our situation, and that we are part of something that's so much bigger than us.
Absolutely, Sharon. So I can just, echo with whatever you're saying. For me personal, throughout my life, whenever I've been going through difficult times, through stressful times, or if I need a holiday, I can't go and lie in a hotel and sip cocktails. It doesn't work for me. I come back as tired as I was. But put me outside somewhere where there's nothing, and it seems like you heal. There's some kind of doctor working inside your soul that gets you better and rests you and makes you think, and you come back completely rejuvenated. So I can just, from personal experience, agree with you. And I did read an article the other day, don't ask me where, but where there were some scientific studies done on people that had sessions, whether it's psychological sessions, not, they didn't talk about logotherapy, but it was actually, they looked at the long-term outcomes under the same therapist when it's done in an outdoor setting like a botanical gardens or whatever, when you sit on a bench there and have your session, versus like we normally do, you go to the doctor's office and you look at them across the bench, across the desk, and the outcomes were very different. And it seems that that there is a lot of value in the silence as well. Just sitting under the tree with someone and watching whatever, or just feeling it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's so much literature that's coming out in terms of the benefit of nature on our well-being. And,
yes.
So you speak about the awe, it's of awe. So there's research on the night skies, and that's the of seeing those night skies. There's research in what they call green nature and blue, well, green spaces and blue spaces, and all of that in terms of just how that has a benefit in terms of human well-being. And I suppose what you're bringing and provoking us to think about is that how can we apply our logotherapeutic frame and lens in the work that we do with the people that we are trying to be useful and integrate nature, whether it's through a bench in the garden, whether it's going for a walk and talk therapy. Absolutely. I know I read about Stroke, an Australian psychologist, and this story really provoked me to think more deeply about what are the spaces where I do therapy and believe those spaces are therapeutic. And he had a crisis of meaning and in terms of himself and his work and who he was after the stroke. And so he started doing his therapy work not in the office anymore, but in the parks. And he would take 2 campuses and he would set them up, and his clients would meet him in the park. And just what a different experience that was for him in his own experience of his life and how in his meaning in the work that he does, as well as experience for his clients.
And Sharon, also just to come back to what you said earlier, is how preserving and looking after nature and the well-being of nature actually leads to our own well-being as well. So quite interesting, just a short anecdote. And in preparation for tonight, I thought that I'd share it with you. Incidentally, this morning, maybe it was divine intervention, there was an article on the BBC regarding the air pollution in Delhi versus Beijing. And Beijing 10, 15 years ago was one of the most polluted cities in terms of air pollution in the world. It has done some amazing things in terms of its air pollution in the last 10 years. It now ranks as one of the top 10 per capita humans cleanest air cities. So it's still dirty, to make no mistake, but per capita of humans, whereas previously it was unlivable, and how they went about cleaning the air. But that's not the moral of the story. The moral of the story is they started looking after the nature around them, and they found that not only did physical diseases reduce in the last 10 years, but mental illness in Beijing is now much better than it was 10 years ago. So pollute your environment, don't look after nature, and don't care for it. It will teach you the lesson that you should look after your things. And it's whether you are a Chinese or a South African, if you go to Beijing and you don't look after the air, you will get sick. It teaches us that from a psychological perspective as well. So thank you for reminding us that as well. It's important to look after these things because they look after you.
Exactly. There's no health
Part of it.
If our environment is not healthy, as
you breathe the air, you drink the water, you eat the food that is produced by and in nature, and you are from nature and will one day become one of nature again. And you, before life and after life and during life, you will be part of this planet. You can't get away from it. It's a reality.
Well, I think you and I could have a conversation for hours, so I'm going to keep quiet to make space for somebody else.
Sure.
Isak, is anyone else who wants to say something, or can I go?
You're the chairperson, you can go anytime.
Isak, there were many, many things that struck me about your video, but I think the thing that struck me the most was the sense of everything, no matter if it was beautiful, destroyed, soft, harsh, everything was as it should be. Even the sadness of the dead elephant, the ugliness of the vultures, the destruction of that tree that had been struck by lightning with the new growth coming out of it, the juxtaposition of this parched land with the promise of rain in the sky that is not being delivered. but still everything is as it should be. Nothing in nature steps out of the role that it plays. And I think in logotherapy, this is kind of aligned to the thing that Frankl talks about what happens to us when we start living in opposition with our values. And it's like nature, if we could say that nature has values, nature does not live in opposition to its values. It does what it does because it does, and it is true to that all the time. And I think that the really sad thing about this is that our disconnection from nature, we've lost who we are, because if we are part of nature, we should be living like that too. And the other thing that struck me was how you said nature doesn't care. It doesn't care about what we believe in, doesn't believe what we feel. Similarly, it doesn't judge. It doesn't judge us for what we do to it. And yet we are also not realizing, as both you and Sharon have highlighted, that by destroying nature, we are destroying ourselves, because we are part of nature. The other thing I think that talking about learning from nature, one of the things that struck me, again, logotherapeutically, I'm sure we've all had, clients who believe that finding meaning has to be a very active process. There is only meaning in doing. And I was thinking about the cycles of nature and what happens in winter and how animals and plants hibernate or die down. And there is absolute meaning in that silence, in that stillness, in that waiting to foster regeneration and regrowth. And that's something else that I think we've lost. We think we have to be busy. And I think for modern human beings, busyness is equated with meaning. If we are not doing, if we are not achieving, if we are not creating, we are not finding meaning. And yet there is meaning in being still in order to prepare for that which must come later. The other thing was just thinking about when we talk about the experiential values, and obviously art is one of the great experiential values. And I was just thinking, what are the great inspirations for art? And I suppose the three that just struck me while I was watching are love. Oh, no, sorry, that's the greyhound voicing his love. Love, religion, and nature. And how some of the great works of art are inspired by that, and that even sometimes a work of art which represents so truthfully that which nature gives us can move us, even if we are standing inside in a gallery or looking at it on the wall. And lastly, I think what is sad and something that we need to bolster in our clients is that we have all experienced that transcendent state of looking at a night sky, or just sitting and looking at a mountain or watching the sea. And yet I don't know, why is it that we forget it so easily? Because we've all experienced it. We all know how it makes us feel. And yet it seems that we don't give ourselves enough opportunity to put ourselves in a position to have that experience. And that, again, I think is something in the search for meaning, we have to find the opportunities that provide meaning. It comes back to that thing that I was saying about busyness. We're so often rushing around looking for them rather than just sitting and letting them come to us. Thank you. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. Your video is beautiful.
Thank you, Mark. Much appreciated. And thanks for those comments. Yeah, again, it does resonate with me. Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? Hello? Sorry, I can't even see everybody. So
anybody out there?
Alison, would you like to say anything? You don't have to, obviously, but just may I just fill everyone in on what you do? So Alison started out as a client of mine, and she has created the most extraordinary garden here in the Riebeek Valley. And in our sessions, it became very clear to me how meaningful nature is to Alison. She propagates and grows families of the most extraordinary, weird, and wonderful plants that you've ever seen, that you've never seen. And I realized that there was a great deal of value in what Alison was creating here. And so I asked her to start. It's almost like a group logotherapy session, but we call it Living Conversations with Nature. And each week we go and sit in Alison's extraordinary garden for an hour. And Alison presents a parable or a story about nature, which with a logotherapeutic slant to it. And then she will take us around and show us the particular plant that she may have been speaking about, or we do a walk through her garden. And this work is really extraordinary. And she's currently working on a wonderful project around this work that she's doing with nature. And it's had a profound effect on my life. And certainly what we were saying earlier about the environments in which we practice therapy, I find those times of not being in my office or on my laptop at home, but sitting in Alison's garden and discussing these things, that hour that I spend there has an effect on me that little else has in my week. So I think we need to start looking at this thing of where we actually practice what we do. I think it's really important. Sorry, Alison, I might have said anything here, but and only if you want to. But if there's anything you'd like to share. Alison, you're muted. Alison, your mic's muted. Still muted. Robert, can you perhaps unmute Alison?
I'm having a.
Okay, there. It should be fine now.
Yes.
Yes, there you go. Hi, Alison.
Hi. Yes. I must say it's nature that's got me through life, and I just find parables in all sorts of things, and I've always just found God's always directed me to plants, and through the stories of plants that I have found my way through life. So yeah, I think it's very deeply with me, and it's only a recent that I'm beginning to tell my stories of how certain plants have traveled with me. I've had plants for like 40 years that tell a story. If anybody's if people die, I plant a plant. If somebody does injustice to me, I tend to plant a plant knowing that I'm going to grow out that justice. If I go on a holiday or an event, I'll always plant a plant. So although people think I'm a bit of a botanist, my garden really is just a collection of stories depicting where I've been and what life has thrown at me and what I've experienced. So yes, that's how I've put my life together.
Thanks, Alison.
Thank you, Alison. And perhaps, just adding as a closing thought, something that I just wanted to add as well is when we think of logotherapy itself, and I'm criticizing myself mostly, we think that meaning can only be found through suffering. I'm not suffering, so I'm not growing. Or if you're suffering, you go, oh, I've been taught so much now through all of this suffering. We seem to love suffering as humans because then we think we grow. And yes, we do. I'm not negating it. I'm not saying that you don't grow through suffering. But you can grow through beautiful things as well. That's why there are 3 values in logotherapy. Only the third one refers to suffering. And I think it's time that we need to remind ourselves of that experiential and creational things can also make you grow. Yes, the dead elephant went through suffering, and yes, the family that lost the car and hopefully not their lives went through suffering. I'm talking of the metaphors in the video. But like you said, the 3 things that inspire art mostly: religion, love, and nature. So you can stand in front of a beautiful painting that depicts nature or love or whatever it may be. There's no suffering in enjoying a beautiful thing. That also can lead to growth and is part of logotherapy. And when I went through therapy at one stage in my life, and it wasn't logotherapy, but it was also, what bothers you? And I started replying, but must something bother me? You know, is it always that you only need help or need nature when something bothers you? So we can grow in nature even if we are healed. It helps us to stay healed as well. It helps us to stay balanced and stay thankful and stay grounded. And that the experiential and the creational values are just as important as those suffering values, those last part of values. We need to find joy again, is also what I'm trying to say. And be joyful in getting the joy. There can be a lot of meaning in joy and beauty. Joy and beautiful music, beautiful art, beautiful nature can give you a lot of meaning, as much meaning as any suffering can. But my child must suffer so that he can learn. All right? It's like, okay, hoekom?
You cannot be a great artist without suffering. Well, we've just told that art can be inspired by love, religion, and nature, not only suffering.
Absolutely. You don't have to cut off your ear to be a good artist.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Isak, for a most wonderful, inspiring presentation, beautiful video. I think what I'm going to suggest is that in order for us to experience this joy that you are telling us about, I think that you need to put together a tour and take us all up to the
Take us all to Coetzee.
and likewise, Alison and I are inviting you all to the beautiful Riebeek Valley, where you can come and look at our mountain and experience Alison's beautiful and meaningful garden. Thank you.
How long drive are you from Cape Town? Not too far, eh?
It's an hour. It's very easy. Quick.
We may just fall out unannounced next week, but anyway, I'll speak to you. That would be great.
Please do. That'll be wonderful.
Maybe. Thank you so much for having me. It is a real pleasure, and it's very good to see old faces and new faces, and everything of the best.
It was lovely to have you. Thanks, Isak.